Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we couldn't be sharing these stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Joi Sumpton with Step & Wash. Welcome, Joi.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get too far into things, tell us about Step & Wash. What is that and how are you serving folks?
I invented a step stool for children to wash their hands in public restrooms because I had gone into all these restrooms before and I looked around and there was nothing in there for toddlers to wash their hands.
So how does it work?
When you go into the restroom, you'll see it and it's underneath the sink. And it's out of the way for adults, but it's there for kids. So parents can walk in, they can pull it down with their hand or their foot. The kids step up, they wash their hands. When they step off, it retracts and goes back underneath the sink.
Now, is this an idea that just is in your head right now, or is this out in the wild?
No, this is out everywhere. This is out in shopping malls, airports, zoos, aquariums, churches, restaurants. It's everywhere now. In fact, it's all over the world, too.
So then how did you go from having this idea and then slowly kind of getting somebody to say, hey, we'll try that in our restaurant or our, rest stop? How did that kind of, how'd you start getting traction?
Well, first of all, I met with a patent attorney and I wanted to see if it had been out there before. And then he did a search on it and found out that it was not out there. And then I met with someone to have a prototype made. When I had the prototype made, I tested it out there for a while. I wanted to make sure that it was working okay. And then I went into production, basically. But this took several years doing incorporation, filing patents, finding a manufacturer. So it took a little bit of time.
So now what was, were you always an inventor? Had you done this with other products before?
This was actually my first invention, but what's interesting, I have it actually on my desk. I wrote in my journal when I was really young that I wanted to invent something that somebody would use and that they would love and it would make them happy and it would be invented by me and be all over the world. And I keep actually the journal that I wrote on my desk because I wrote this down years ago and I always thought about inventing something even in high school. And then years later, I did invent something and now it is all over the world. So I show people always write down your dreams because it's nice to look back to see that they do come true.
Now, when you had the idea, like I'm sure in your life you've had lots of ideas, right? This wasn't the only idea you've ever had. How did you know that this is the one that I'm going to really invest in and really, try to make real?
This one, I got that excited feeling. I was so excited about it. And then I went to the patent website and I was searching all over to see if it was there and it wasn't there. And then I thought to myself, I probably need to know for sure if it is out there. So that's when I contacted a patent attorney and I said, can you do an extended search on this? And he said, yes. And he even said, oh, I'm sure it's out there. And he called back and said it wasn't there. But I really had that excited feeling in myself going, this is it. This is what I've always wanted. This is what's going to be the product that I'm going to invent and that everybody's going to use.
Now, so when you have the idea and then conceptually you check it out and you're like, hey, no one's done this yet. So then you can do this. So then you go through and there was a learning curve on the getting a patent, right? That's not something you can just, kind of Google, get a patent and then it just tells you what to do, right? Isn't it a little trickier than that?
Definite big learning curve. When I contacted the patent attorney, he said, well, if you want, you could do a provisional patent and that will hold your idea for 1 year. And then you can do some research to see if this is something you want to go ahead and do. So because I didn't have very much money at the time, I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll start with the provisional patent and I'll work on it for a year and see if this is something in a year from now that I really want to pursue, because patents can be very expensive. But I worked really hard in that year because I knew it was 1 year to the date that I had to file the patent. And I had worked so hard on getting this product made. When I got it out there within that year, I knew that I definitely wanted to do the patent.
And then, so at that time, you were trying to build prototypes, or what were you do? What was the activity you were doing in that year?
That was definitely it. I was building prototypes, and then I was testing the market to see if this is something that people would buy. When I first started it, I tested it and put it out on the market. And I thought, no, this needs to be changed. This needs to be changed. It needs to be worked on a little bit of different design. And so I met with different engineers to have the design changed. And also I wanted to meet with the person that was going to do the patent. Can you do the drawings for the patent? So I was filing all of these things at the same time. But when I filed the actual pictures, the pictures had changed through the years to the new design.
Now, at some point, you had to get a company to say, okay, we'll test it here, right? Like, how did that come about?
I actually thought that people would just buy it. That was my first thing. I thought, I'll just walk into businesses and they're going to buy it. But they didn't. They would say, well, who has this? And I would say, nobody. Do you want to get it? And they said, no. And I came home. I was really upset. I was crying. And my husband said, well, you're just going to have to give them away. And I'm like, give them away? I can't give them away. We're already in debt. And he said, you're going to have to do it. So I went around to some of the local places in Atlanta and I gave them away. And that helped me to get my foot into the door in order to sell it, because then now other places had it.
Now, so you give it away, like what type, don't tell me the name of the company, but what type of a business was the first one that had these?
Children's play areas first had it.
Right. So then you say, okay, here, let's put it there. And they say, let's test it, right? And
exactly. Yeah.
And then
let's test it.
How did they know that it was a good thing? Like, because a kid and the parents, like, how did the business know, yeah, they liked that, or that was good to have?
Well, I actually went in there to some of the businesses that I had given it away to, and I was talking to the parents, and they're like, oh my gosh, we love it. And I'm like, well, can you please tell the company that I had given it to that you really love it? So hopefully that they will now buy more. And the parents gave me such good feedback because they were so excited that they didn't have to lift their kids to wash their hands. And then when the other children walked in and saw the other kids using it, they actually waited in line to say, I don't want to wash my hands over at this sink. I want to use this thing that all the other kids are using. So I got to watch that firsthand. So I knew I had something good then.
And that's a good lesson for entrepreneurs out there, that you can't just build it and they will come. You got to really kind of encourage this through all the iterations early on, right? That
was like the miss. A lot of people would say to me, oh, you mean you invent something, you patent it, and you're rich? And I said, no, you invent something and then you give it away for free and then you hope it works. And they look at me like, that's not how I thought it went. I go, that's not how I thought it went either. You actually have to give it away. Nobody wants it until somebody else has it.
Well, these are these myths that are out there for entrepreneurs. They think that if they come up with this great idea, that's the hardest part. And I'm not saying that's an easy part, but that's just one of the hardest parts. There's lots of hardest parts.
There is another hard part that a lot of people don't know. They think that you invent something and that you automatically get the patent for it. And that's another one. When I talked to the patent office, at first I was refused. I got to know that I was not going to get my patent. And then I said, why not? This is how many I had sold. And I proved to the patent office that I had sold a certain amount. And he said, wow, there is a need for this on the market. And I said, there definitely is. And he says, these are the couple changes that need to be changed in your patent. If you change those things, I will give you your patent. So I called back the patent attorney and said, this is the wording that needs to be changed. And he did it. And I got my patent.
Right. So it was a collaborative effort. It wasn't like you just trying things and hoping they say, yes, you're in. It was you went back and forth, and then you eventually got what you needed to get in order to get the patent.
Exactly. And I was amazed too on how many no's you'll get. I got no's when I was trying to sell it. I got no's from the patent office. And you're basically just weeding through all the no's to get, what would you like me to do so I can get you to say yes? And ask their advice, change it, and then you'll get your yes. And that was the same thing. I gave it away, my product. I gave it away for free, which was hurting me. And then I eventually got my first sale, which was in Atlanta. And from there on, people started saying yes, because I could start saying, these are all the places that have it. So when I made my next business call to meet with them and show it to them, they're like, all of these places already have it? And I said, it's already installed and they love it. They go, okay, we'll try it too.
Right, because people don't want to be the first one in the pool. They want to make sure that the water's fine, you know?
Exactly.
And that's another lesson for folks, that listening to your customer, learning what they want exactly, giving them what they want, and then getting them to, kind of brag about you. That can really accelerate your growth. I'm sure once you got a few people that were buying it, then it opened up the door to a lot more folks. It
did. That helped me grow a lot.
So now, has the pandemic impacted the business at all? I would imagine less people are out in these places from that standpoint, but it's still a need in all those places.
The pandemic has helped me a lot, because sometimes when I was calling on customers, I was passed because of budget, and now because it's all talked about every single day, hand washing, the cleanliness, I went to the top of everybody's budget. So because I went to the top of everybody's budget, my sales are really booming this year. And just like last week, Children's Healthcare of Boston, they installed it. They never had a step stool in the restroom for kids to wash their hands. And they just installed it last week. So I went to the top of the list of being installed because of COVID.
Wow. And then that probably opens the door to every children's hospital on the planet.
Yes. And that was Boston Children's Hospital last week. So
right.
I was very excited about that.
So now you mentioned that in Atlanta, that was the first kind of sale. How has Atlanta been a good market for you?
Atlanta has been the best for me. First of all, getting into the Atlanta airport was huge for me. They tested it for several years. And because they tested it for a couple of years, they weren't getting feedback, because parents didn't walk out and tell anybody, oh, I love that step stool. When I was first tested in the Atlanta airport, I had to put on a little meter that would register how many times it was being used. And I explained to them that in one restroom, it was used 29 times a day. Yet the parents didn't comment, oh, I love that step stool. They went, wait a minute, it's 29 times just in that one restroom? All these kids are washing their hands? And I said, yeah, and if I break it down for you, that was actually a penny of use. And they went, oh my gosh, we love it. We'll take it. And then I got into all of the Atlanta airport, and to be in the busiest airport in the world was like a huge, huge reward for me.
So now in this entrepreneurial journey that you've been on, what's your favorite part?
I would have to say one of my favorite things is I walked in, and I was in the airport a few weeks ago, and I watched a little boy walk into the bathroom, and he said to Mom, look, Mom, Step and Wash is in here. And he knew it by name. And the fact that he knew it by name just brought tears to my eyes. And I walked over and I said, how did you know the name of that? And he said, oh, I've used it at different places in Atlanta and I love it. And I thought, that is the coolest thing, that this little boy had to have been about 5 years old and he knew the name of my product.
Now, is this how you envisioned it when you were a little kid and dreamed of inventing something? I
envisioned it being big, and I envisioned it to being all over the world. But most of all, I love the fact that it makes people happy. It takes off the stress for parents that when they're in the restroom, here's a step stool that all they have to do is pull it down and the kids can wash their hands. They don't have to lift them up and struggle. I love that the kids feel the independence and are excited to wash their hands. They walk over and they go, I'll wash my hands. I'll be fine. I'm on my own. And that it makes them happy to know that this step stool is actually for them to use.
So now what's next?
Next is I'm hoping to be in every single restroom all over the United States and all over the world. I want parents to know that when they go out somewhere that there is that Step and Wash is in that place and that it's easy for them to use. I'm hoping that I just can keep growing and growing. And I hope that people realize the importance of washing their hands, because I wanted children to know that they watch the adults wash their hands, but I wanted kids to know they need to learn to wash their hands. And if you start this at a young age, it's keeping them healthy, especially since flu season's coming along soon.
Congratulations on all the success. It's really an amazing story, and you should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you. I am very proud of myself, but I appreciate you saying that.
Well, if somebody wanted to learn more, if there's a business out there that isn't taking advantage of this great opportunity to help the kids, empower the kids to wash their hands, and especially, like you said, in flu season, this is the time where this stuff spreads like crazy. And if you make it easy for the kid to wash their hands, they'll probably wash their hands. So if somebody wanted to get their hands on the Step and Wash in their business, what's the website?
The website is stepandwash.com.
And that's STEP, the letter N, wash, WASH.com.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Joi, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio. And remember, this work would not be possible without the support of our sponsor, OnPay. Please support them so we can continue to share these important stories.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com.